I'm author and critic David Agranoff. I'm a horror and science fiction author, critic, and researcher. In this podcast, I wanted to provide in-depth interviews and panel discussions with everyone from New York Times bestselling authors to researchers, musicians, and anyone I find interesting. Welcome to Postcards from a Dying World. Hello and welcome to Postcards from a Dying World. I have a returning guest, the fourth time that Stephen Graham Jones has been on Postcards from a Dying World, including the basketball panel with Paul Tremblay and Josh Mallerman. If you're a basketball fan, to hear a bunch of horror geeks talk about basketball, that was pretty fun. But today we're talking about mapping the interior. But before we get to that, I have to address an elephant in the room. I haven't done an episode in a long time, and there are two competing factors for why I haven't done that. So I need to let my listeners know. And if you're here for Steven, I'm sorry, just bear with me for a second. Two things have happened. One is that we've started doing live Dickheads podcast every Tuesday night with a different guest. And then the Dickheads all hang out and talk Philip K. Dick in the second hour. And that means I'm having to book a guest for every week, which is a lot of work. And that's something I haven't been used to. That's one part of why I haven't done an episode in a while. And the other thing is that I am ass deep in a deadline for the sequel to The Last Night to Kill Nazis. So I've been getting up at 4 o'clock every morning to work on a novel. So, and I'm not going to say too much, but I will say U-boats and mummies. So you guys want me to do this, right? So here's the thing. Postcards, I've put on hold some of our regular episodes, the unproduced screenplay series, the Science Fiction Hall of Fame series, the Star Trek coverage. It's all coming back. We're all going to be doing it. In fact, we may be this weekend recording an episode about Andor season 2 with a whole bunch of writer nerds, which should be really fun because the amount of writing advice that is floating around the internet from the team who wrote season 2 of Andor is pretty incredible. Have you watched any of this, Stephen?
I watched the first season and I have not started the second season yet, but I've been saving it for summer, and my summer started about like 3 days ago, so I'm really excited to get into it.
Yeah, the writing quality. I mean, it's
hmm
Tony Gilroy, so we expect this, but
hmm
I've been following all the interviews and the amount of writing advice that has come out of that writers' room from all the different writers is really incredible. And I heard one this morning that I actually want to get your thoughts
Yeah,
on because I
yeah,
thought it was really neat, and maybe we can start there.
let's do it.
But I heard one of the writers say that Tony Gilroy told him, listen, I know you're writing Star Wars and you want to play with all the toys in the toy box,
hmm
but let's think for a minute about what we can add to the toy box. And I thought he was like, you should be adding to the toy box instead of constantly pulling things from the toy box. Now, you are a writer who loves to play with the horror and genre tropes, and this one being a ghost story that we're talking about, which is the 8-year-old book being reissued, Mapping the Interior. What do you think about that concept of like the difference between taking from the toy box and finding ways to add to the toy box?
I do like that. I mean, well, I guess I should, before I answer, I should say when I got invited to write in the Predator like universe or mythos or lore, whatever you call it, um, I said I would do it as long as I didn't have to play with any of those Predator toys. I didn't want to do the claws. I didn't want to do the laser targeters on the shoulder. I don't want to do any of that stuff, you know? And I said, I'll write Predator if I can write a Predator without any of that stuff. And they said, go for it. And I did it, and it was a blast, you know? So I guess my first impulse would be, don't even open the toy box, you know? That's what I
Right.
like. That's what I like to do. But I do like that idea of um coming up with new toys, you know. Although I guess you can run the hazard of didn't was it Ryan Johnson got a lot of like pushback for using the what is it Force Ghost or whatever that was for Luke Skywalker? Is that right? Was it Ryan
Um,
Johnson? Who was that?
no,
Who am I
well,
get the name wrong?
I don't think he force ghosted. No, are you thinking about J.J. Abrams force ghosting Han
Luke?
Solo is the one of the ones that I think is
Oh no. Well, I'm
pushing
thinking
it.
of when Luke Skywalker projected from that little blue milk
Oh
planet
yeah,
he's
yeah, in
on.
Last Jedi, yeah, he
Yeah,
projected
yeah.
himself. Yeah,
Yeah. I call that Force Ghost. I don't know what it is really, but but
yeah,
I mean,
force projection, let's say.
okay, which actually, I mean, as I heard people argue, is in the toy box, but nobody was playing with it, you know, and so you can kind
Right.
of get in trouble for pulling out what people think are new toys. But I think why not? You know, just as long as it doesn't completely break the rules of the universe, you know, and it's it's got to feel it's if it makes the universe bigger, why not? You know.
Yeah. Well, and one of my favorite things about reading your work
Mm,
and when I get the chance to dive into these things is to pick your brain
mm,
as a writer because you're also a teacher. You've
mm,
been teaching, and you and I both know that sometimes the best way to learn is to teach,
mm,
because you're forcing yourself to explain things.
yeah.
I feel like every writer should have somebody that they kind of take under their wings for the simple fact of you learn so much by teaching. What do you Let's talk about this particular
Mm,
book, Mapping the Interior. And it's a ghost story, but it's also a family story.
mm,
And um, there's a lot of things that are teachable about it. But do you have element like what did you set out to do with this book? Like when you sat down, what was the
mm.
idea that was the spark? Was it the ghost? Was it the family? What
Yeah.
was it?
You know, but before I answer that, when you were talking about teaching, taking someone under your wing, you can also, if you recognize somebody is too talented, you can take them under your wing and smother them so they don't overshadow
So they
you, you
don't
know?
become competition, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the pumping iron thing where Lou Schwarzenegger's talking about Lou Ferrigno, and he said, "I give them all the wrong at the faces." You know, that's
Yeah, no, hopefully I've never done that. But you know, with mapping the interior, Ellen Datlow called me up. This is probably 2016, and she said, "Hey, can you do a novella for me for this new like tour line?" And of course it's Ellen, so I said sure. And I thought I want to do what I thought was I want to do a ghost story because I'd never done a legit ghost story really. I'd
Mhm.
done scary stuff, but not ghosts. And so when I came at it, what I wanted to do was figure out a way to make the ghost actually be a threat and for them to be because that opens the door for them to be scary to me because
Yeah.
to me, ghosts are never actually scary. It's like, yeah, they startle you. They make you drop your warm milk you're drinking from bed or whatever, and your cup shatters. But that's about it. All they can do is tell you secrets, you know, and like jump
Well,
scare you.
they
Yeah,
can shatter your faith or force you to try and confront
yeah,
it. They can do
yeah.
that.
They can do that, but it's all like it's not like physical threat, you know.
Mhm.
And so with mapping the interior, I wanted to figure out a way to move my ghost slowly from discorporeal to corporeal, you know, if that makes sense. If or
Yeah.
is that corporeal? Is that should I say it like
Corpora.
that?
Yeah.
Corporeal? Yeah, yeah.
Well, and that's like the babysitter lives. Your
Mhm.
which is going to be published in print soon.
Yeah.
You play with the haunted house with the idea of doorways and
Hmm.
like passages that go to weird places.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
the setting of this story is connects to the ghost too. But
Yeah.
so a huge part of this story is the vibe and the setting. But that's Ghost 101, right?
Yeah, kind
And
of. Well, I mean, the setting for this, like, I mean, I've told you this before, I'm sure. I'm never strategic. I don't know, like what year, what area, what house. I don't know anything about a story until I put the first word or the first line down. But I wrote Mapping the Interior in 4 days, and because I had no time to think about anything, the main character, Junior, he's pretty much me at that age, and this is pretty much a house we lived in, and that tetherball pole is a tetherball pole I grew up with, you know. So it's a weirdly autobiographical book, this one is. But they all
mhm.
are too, I should say.
Well, yeah, but I probably this one
Mm.
because of the short time that
Yeah.
that you wrote it in. Now, was that
Mhm.
a forced deadline or a personal deadline, or you had to turn it in?
No, it wasn't due for a while, I think. I think it was more about the semester was starting, and I knew that that was going to start eating up all my hours. And it was just right at the end of the summer, and I thought I better get this done so I can focus on class. And so I just jammed through it really quickly. I actually kept a journal or a log while I did it, and I published it somewhere, maybe on my website. I don't know, Mapping the Interior of Mapping the Interior. It was the first book I ever wrote where each writing session I would finish, I would tab over and do a little log entry. It was kind of fun.
Hmm. Yeah, so I'm currently in this situation where I realize so I like writing in the morning,
Hmm.
but I wake up usually have enough time to have breakfast and then I'm off to
Yeah.
work and I didn't have that time. So I've been driving my wife crazy by setting the alarm for 4 a.m.
Hmm.
In the process of writing this current book
Hmm.
and like making myself get up. But one of the things that's cool about it is that I have a ticking clock every time that I
Yeah.
sit down, and it really
Yeah.
prevents me from being like, "Oh, let me, find another podcast about Andor," right? Like, where's more Tony Gilroy writing advice that's helping me procrastinate, right? So that
Yeah.
timeline
Yeah.
makes me go, okay, well, if I want to get chapter 16 done this morning,
Hmm.
it was 18 this morning,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
if I want to get this done or I want to get a good chunk of it done,
Hmm.
I strategically plan things. Like I did the research like last night I had to do a
Hmm.
bunch of research on sonar and I had to know a couple things about sonar before
Yeah.
I could write this morning. So I made sure I
Yeah.
did that the night before, right?
That's
And
smart.
so with that
Yeah.
4 day window of like I got to get this
Hmm.
done by the semester, that
Hmm.
probably adds things that you can now look back at the book and see are a part of that compressed timeline. I'd imagine, right?
Yeah, you're right. Because I mean, I isolated them way out. To me, it was outside of Great Falls, but it can be probably anywhere in Montana or Wyoming. And like isolated in a little bitty house, and there's a bus stop, and there's like a neighbor, and I made the world as like contained as possible, so I didn't have to go research sonar or anything. Like I know how dogs work, so I could have dogs in my story. You know?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering about the autobiographical stuff because I
Hmm.
I don't know your
Hmm.
parental situation, but
Hmm.
Junior's situation
Hmm.
is that he didn't really know his father very well,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so there's a really dogs freaking out. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all right. But no, but no,
um,
but no, you're right. Oh, I mean, I can
yeah,
fill you
no, but
in.
so this
Yeah.
scene with Junior where the mom says, you look like your dad,
Yeah.
and I didn't want
Yeah.
to tell you that because I didn't want to make you sad about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That I experienced that. Like my mom and dad, they were split up before I was even 1 year old, 1 years old, I think. And my dad was off in the Air Force doing all kinds of Air Force things, and I was in West Texas. But when I was a kid and I would go to Stanton, which was the big town close to us, and I say big, it had 3,000 people on a good day. It wasn't big, but it was big compared to a house out in the pasture. And when I walked down the street, people always knew whose son I was because I looked just like my dad. And so there's all kinds of bits like that throughout Mapping the Interior.
Yeah, at my father's funeral, I didn't have to introduce myself to anybody. Like
Yeah,
they knew who
yeah.
I was. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I just had lunch with my dad today at Takabi here in Denver, and it's always neat because I look at him. He's like 19 years older than me, and I'm like, well, that's what I'm looking like in 19 years. That's good to know.
That's yeah. So yeah, and this whole and so one of the things too about the scene on page 27 that also is that Junior like also um you know there's this whole thing where he says where his father is a fancy dancer
Hmm.
in the imagery, but I got the impression, and maybe I'm
Hmm.
I reread this, I read it when it came out and now
Hmm.
I'm rereading it,
Hmm.
and well, no, 2019 I think I read it,
Hmm.
and then but I got the impression that the idea is that the father wasn't a fancy dancer or
Hmm.
wasn't into these things,
Hmm.
but his spirit was, and
Hmm.
that also is a little bit a great little horror detail because this ghost is something that his father wasn't, and
Hmm.
is that a detail I'm Am I correct on that? I don't.
Yeah. Well, I
That's
mean,
what I
there's.
caught on to.
I also haven't read this in a. You've read it a lot more recently than I have. I haven't read it since 2016, probably maybe 2017. But there's. I remember there being something in there about um Indian men who die young are always kind of gauged on their potential or something like that, you know?
Hmm.
And I think this guy had the potential and the expectation a little bit that he would be a, competitive fancy dancer. And he didn't achieve that in his life, but in death, he's continued on that path a little bit. But I mean, that make it all sound like it's intentional. Really, I just think it would be stultifyingly terrifying to, in the shadows, see a fancy dancer silhouette because those dudes got, bustles and feathers, all kinds of stuff going on, and that would be terrifying, man.
Yeah, yeah, and there's some
Uh,
commentary in this story, another
uh,
about 10 pages after that,
uh,
about ghosts, and I'm gonna
yeah.
read it to kind of refresh,
Hmm.
but also because I think I want to talk about it because you alluded to this, and I think this is part of the mission statement. And he says, because a ghost, it's basically useless. It's just a vision, a phantasm. It doesn't make sense that it could interact with light, much less a floor or a person or clothes,
Hmm.
meaning it would have to have some kind of organic beginning. And this is where you're talking about starting the idea of transitioning the ghost from spirit to something physical, but it's
Hmm.
also, you're talking about kind of your boredom with the concept of a ghost, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
does that feel as like somewhat of a mission statement there in the back? I'm
Yeah.
always looking for mission statements and whatever.
No, I am too. I'm looking for mission statements and theses and everything I read, and it's so cool that you found that. And um, I'm surprised that I put that in there because that was like it feels weird to like say it so baldly, just
Yeah.
but I'm glad I did because like when I see like in a movie and I see a ghost on the second floor of a house, I'm like, how is it standing on that floor? Why does it care where the level of the floor is? Why is it not floating? Why is it not falling through? Just never makes sense to me. I like the physics of ghosts don't make sense to me. And I mean, I understand that it's not supposed to make sense because they're spectral, they're supernatural, they're like other dimensional, whatever it is. I understand they're not supposed to make sense, but nevertheless, for me to believe in them for the story to work, they need to make some sort of sense.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some fictional ghosts that
Mm,
inspired you because and one of the things that I've always appreciated about you,
mm,
Stephen, is that you don't shy away from talking about your influences.
mm,
And a lot of writers are afraid to be like, oh yeah, I totally was influenced by that one. I always tell the
mm,
story is when John Shirley introduced Cody Goodfellow and I to Rudy
mm.
Rutger. He jokingly said to Cody, he's like, "This is Rudy Rucker. You've probably ripped off his work a bunch of times." And Cody's response was, "Hell yeah, I have." and
That's how
I
Cody is, man.
yeah, exactly. And by the way, shout out to, I haven't had a chance to publicly, but
Uh,
I am the first person to review Cody's new novel, New Tomorrow.
oh, nice.
It is incredible. It's
Hmm.
a superhero kind of Watchmen style, but way weirder, set in an
Wow.
alternate history, Great Depression.
Oh,
With
wow.
one of the best villain backstories I've ever read, and so it's up
Wow.
for pre-order now. And I do want to shout out to people should check out New Tomorrow because it knocked my socks off.
Oh, that is exciting. Cody is like, some people you're in the room with them and you're like, this person is 47 times smarter than me. And Cody is one of those people,
Oh yeah,
him.
yeah. And he's
Yeah.
a local for me. So, and
Yeah.
I just hung out with him on Friday, and
Yeah.
it makes, to this day, because I've known Cody for a couple
Uh-huh.
decades, I have never understood how he is not a household
Uh-huh.
name and all this stuff
Uh-huh.
because he is
Yeah.
so brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I hope he
for me,
never
they're,
hears me say that.
yeah, no,
But
you gotta
yeah,
block this from him
yeah,
somehow. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But
You know, Co
anyways, back
yeah,
to
go.
the ghost influences,
Yeah. Yeah.
for not just this one but your favorite ghost stories
Oh man,
or
that's a good
novels.
question. Let me think. That's a I know my favorite type of ghost, and I'm trying to think what it. The Shining has this type of ghost actually, and
Yeah.
that might be my favorite. It's the stone tape ghost. It's the ghost that is locked in its daily pattern of life, completely unaware of you. And well,
Yeah.
I say completely aware. It can notice you if you make yourself known to it, but and you don't want to do that because things turn bad. But um, I was reading. I was on the committee for a dissertation. I don't know, a year ago maybe, and it was about ghosts, just ghost stories. It wasn't about ghosts. It was about ghost stories. And there's this one ghost story that got relayed about a theater, I want to say down in Houston, where the cleaning staff kept reporting someone walking across a hallway up on the second or third floor to a bathroom, and they would stay out there doing their, mopping and stuff, and that person never came out. And I get chills right now just thinking about that. Those are the type
Yeah.
of ghosts that I cannot handle. The ghosts that say, "Ooh, come find my body," or Gerald killed me, or all that stuff. Those are stupid ghosts to me. But the type of ghost that just walks across the hall into a door and there's never any explanation, those are the worst kind. Actually, I should say the scariest ghost story I've ever read is by Gene Wolfe. It's a little three, maybe four-page story called Fish Story. It may be called A Fish Story or Fish Story. And it was published in, I want to say, Blackwater or Blackwater 2, one of those anthologies from probably late 80s, early 90s. And it's about a ghost like that is never explained. I say a ghost, it's more of a doppelganger, but to me it's a ghost. And it's never explained. Those are the type of ghosts that I cannot get over. The kind that you never know their story, you never know their reason. Those are the kind that I can't handle, man.
Yeah. Well, and then, I think it's so funny because everybody puts a lot of attention on the Sixth Sense because of
Yeah,
of the
yeah. Yeah.
and what's funny is I was explaining to someone the other day, we were talking about the Sixth Sense, and I
Hmm.
said, and I made the argument that Philip K. Dick already did the Sixth Sense.
Uh,
And then they were like, what? And this is a dickhead that I was talking to, and they were
uh,
like, what do you mean? And I was like, oh, come on, Ubik.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
because Ubik,
yeah,
the character, all the characters, they don't know they're dead, right?
yeah, yeah.
And that's the twist of it, is them finding out
Hmm.
they're dead, and it's really the same twist as the Sixth,
Yeah.
technically,
That's a good
because
point. And but it's actually a kind of an escalation from the Sixth Sense, even though the Sixth Sense comes later, because that
yeah,
kid in there, Jeremy or whatever, he's like carnivorous,
yeah.
Like, yeah, is that his name, Jeremy? Am I remembering right? Or
Oh,
Jay something.
I'm
Jay
forgetting
something.
his name right
Yeah,
now too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. And then, but yeah, Ubik is a similar point, but doing lots of other different things.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
and it's funny too because the escalation of it we had in horror movies. Of course,
Uh-huh.
the next big escalation was The Others, which
Yeah,
took a group of ghosts and
yeah.
that whole thing, and which I did love. The Others, I did think,
Mm, mm.
I that's a movie that I think even if you have it spoiled, it's still a great experience.
It's kind
And
of, I mean, I don't, if I'm remembering the others correctly, it's kind of like an unfunny Beetlejuice. Is that right? Or,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, kind of, yeah. It's sort of, yeah. Well, I don't think you're supposed to know that they're dead the
Yeah.
whole time.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah.
I kind of took it as a gothic escalation of Sixth Sense, but
Okay. All right.
what I do remember though was at the time I went to see it because Clive Barker said that it was the best horror movie in a couple years,
Really? Oh, that's
at the
surprising.
time. And I remember like going to the theater with very high bar because I
Hmm.
was like, well, Clive Barker said this was good.
Hmm. Hmm.
And not really being very disappointed. I actually did think
Hmm.
that was great. And
Hmm.
the director was the guy who did the Spanish Open Your Eyes that
Oh yeah. Yeah.
remade it.
The,
Yeah.
yeah. That got remade into Vanilla Sky.
Yeah, yeah. So good
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, and I think one of the things about like a book like Mapping the Interior
Hmm.
that makes, is, you get your chance to put your stamp on these things,
Hmm.
but I think um one of the things about it is that, it has so much of your voice in it,
Hmm.
and partially I think it's a really distilled one because with like Buffalo Hunter, for example, like I think you knew the weight of what you were doing.
Mhm.
And unconsciously you can't help but like put out a novella that you're working on for 4 days to have it
Mhm.
be a little bit more pure form because
Mhm.
it's not one you're going to slave over for months
Yeah.
or like have
Yeah.
pain over. Am I right about that?
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Well, number one, like with Map of the Interior, I didn't really expect people to latch onto or hook into like what I was doing with Ghost. My first, I mean, yes, I wanted to play around with the Ghost, but my first push as a horror writer has to be I want this to be somewhat disturbing or scary or make people feel dread or something. That's whatever I can do to make that happen. That's what I'm kind of compelled to do. So secondary to that is let me do my kind of ghost instead of the other kind of ghost or the other kind of ghosts, plural, I should say.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you have plenty of short stories that you've
Mm-hmm.
worked on, but like
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of your readers that you've developed over the years, and we talked about Mapping the Interior was released 8 years ago, but
Mm-hmm.
and so maybe talk about the decision for why Tor wanted to do a new edition. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
largely because like you have a much larger reader base than you did when this came out, right?
Yeah, that could be it. Just a chance to relaunch the book, and the book is selling really well. It's like that cafe seller at Barnes and Nobles, you know. So there's a
Yeah.
huge stack of them every time somebody buys a coffee, and they can get the book for $5 or something. And I think it's moving off the shelves really rapidly. And it was neat to see it in a new wrapper too, a new cover, and
Yeah.
it was cool for me to get to work with Kelly again. You know, Kelly, she was Kelly O'Connor back then when that's who the book is dedicated to. But that's Kelly Lonesome, who is
Yeah.
the one who is in charge of this. And she was the one who acquired and edited Mongrels, you know?
Mhm.
And so it's now that she's at Nightfire, it's really cool to get to work with her again on this re-release, you know? It was cool that I mean, we talk to each other all the time, Kelly and I do, but it was cool that we found a way to do something together again.
Yeah. I didn't know about that
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble's cafe
Yeah.
release. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really cool. It's cool. I've been signing all these in purple ink too. A reader, Lauren Elise, gave me a purple pen last time we saw each other, and I had happened to have it on me when I saw a stack of these, and it matches the cover. I always like to do an ink that kind of matches the accent of the book. It's ridiculous. It makes me carry like 800 pens around with me.
That's cool.
Uh,
Yeah, that's another reason to do the re-release, right, too, is to have this cafe
yeah,
release
yeah,
thing. That's super.
yeah.
That's a super neat thing.
No, I'm really thankful to Barnes and Noble for selecting Mapping the Interior for this, you know, because to me it is kind of a quiet horror novel or horror story, you know, and I'm not sure what kind of books they generally select for the buy this book with a cup of coffee kind of thing, but I wouldn't think that would be Mapping the Interior, so it's really cool that they did that.
Yeah, that's. I'm
Mhm.
really blown away by that. That's
Mhm.
that's great.
Mhm.
Well, and it's funny because a book like this really can also give an example to your readers who only know you from the novels, like
Mhm.
the more experimental short
Mhm.
form. They give
Mhm.
you a sample or a taste of that, which
Yeah, sampler, that's a good way to say it. Like a sampler platter, you know, like I don't
yeah,
want the whole
totally.
meal. Let me see if I like the taste. Let me see if this kitchen does cooking like I like it, you know.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a smart by Tor to way to find new
Yeah.
to get new eyeballs towards your work in general, because
Hmm.
especially it helps too that Buffalo Hunter has been
Hmm.
up
Hmm.
at the front of the last time I was in Barnes and Nobles, it
Yeah.
was it was right up at the front, and
That's cool. Yeah.
at least here in San Diego. So
Yeah. You know, I was saying I don't know what kind of books they pick for their cafe reads. It sounds like I'm never in Barnes and Nobles. I'm in Barnes and Nobles a lot. The reason I don't know what they pick for their cafe reads is because I don't drink coffee, so I never go to the coffee place.
right, right. Well, it's funny. I've gone into well, I I've gone in a couple times to sign copies of Last Night to
Hmm.
Kill Nazis and Barnes and
Hmm.
Nobles just to like
Hmm.
just to do that. And the last time I went into the Point Loma here in San Diego, Barnes and Nobles, I found like 5 or 6 local writers that their books
Nice.
were just in the horror section.
Yeah.
And so like I went up and talked to the manager and I said, yeah, you should get all these people to come into the store, and
Hmm.
sign these. Like, I'm
Hmm.
sure they would love to. I mean, like
Yeah.
Mayberry and Brian Asman and like,
Yeah.
um, and Kirsten White, like a bunch of San
Hmm.
Diego people. And it was
Hmm.
cool because I didn't realize how much local representation we had in the horror section at Barnes
Yeah.
and Noble until
Yeah.
I sat there, and it was very cool to see. And
It is.
I think
Yeah.
the fact that Barnes and Nobles has been letting their booksellers
Hmm.
individualize the stores a bit has done nothing but help horror. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. It seems like this has been going on for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. But I've been hearing it from a lot of Barnes and Noble employees that they have been given license to curate, rather than have it be a corporate decision. And I think it's been wonderful for the chain bookstore.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think Barnes and Nobles has made a few key changes recently that have really helped.
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a couple more things on mapping the interior, and I don't want to give. I'm not sure if I can spoil this book because I think so much of it is tone, vibe,
Mm.
and texture, and I don't really think I can give that away. But it's page 59 where you start to the corporeal aspect of Dad really starts to like come into it,
Yeah.
and there's you know um where he's the part where the father is looking over Dino, and it says his fingertips were to either side of Dino's sleeping shape, and he had one knee on the bed, one foot on the ground, and he was looking across the room like an animal right into my soul. Now, this is the dad becoming a more physical threat. This is where
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of transcending the ghost, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like like do you get a sense that, or are you having a feeling, were you wanting that to give kind of a body horror feeling to it?
I was, yeah. I mean, I was tempted to have him have a big long proboscis, like a big grody looking proboscis or something, but I didn't want to break the human form for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I just had an instinct not to do that. So I don't think I'd give him any kind of proboscis like that, which actually happens. There's a really good supernatural episode about a succubus who runs a liposuction clinic, they
Yeah.
have those long proboscises, if that's how you make that word plural. But yeah, I think body horror is great. I think it's fun and great because it grosses me out so completely. I like have a very low tolerance for when I'll gag, so
Yeah.
so it's fun for me to like do it to myself when I'm writing for sure.
Now, I want to share with you an
Yeah.
argument I had about this book with
Uh-huh.
somebody who commented on my review in 2019, going
Oh
back to
wow.
then.
All right. All right.
And I said, this is one of the more, because I mentioned that you were a dickhead.
Hmm.
And I said, this is one of the more overtly Philip K. Dick works that
Nice.
Stephen had published.
Hmm.
And somebody said, responded and said, I read this. I found nothing PKD about it. And then I responded, have you read The Father Thing,
Mm.
the short story? And
Hmm.
this person said no. And I said, read that story and come
Hmm.
back
Nice.
to me.
Nice. I can't.
Because
Yeah, yeah.
one of the overlining things in Phil's life
Hmm.
beyond his twin sister who haunted him
Hmm.
was his father who
Hmm.
disappeared and
Hmm.
for most of his childhood
Hmm.
and haunted him.
Hmm.
And this inspired a short story called The Father Thing, which was um not, the plots are nothing alike. It's about
Hmm.
tone and vibe and the whole
Hmm.
like being haunted by a father that's not necessarily there all the time.
Hmm.
That was what I was responding to and saying
Nice.
I felt was the PKD aspect of it. And then I got to
Nice.
be a little snooty and say, go read a short story and then come back, but
That's fun. Yeah.
yeah. So I wonder like what you think about that, like this idea, because
Yeah.
I thought it was very PKD, but
Yeah.
reasons that, PKD isn't just what is reality, like
Yeah, yeah,
just like the major themes, the private cosmos.
yeah,
Those are the themes, but he had recurring themes that were different that people don't
yeah.
always necessarily catch on to.
No, that's really cool. I mean, I can't even think of the father thing. I'm gonna have to go look it up myself. I've got all the stories back here somewhere. Um, I
The
may have
father
read
thing
it.
is also one that was adapted into an Electric Dreams episode.
Oh,
So
it was. Oh, okay.
yeah,
Wow. No, I don't. Um, I thought when you were saying that Method Interior had some Philip K. Dick qualities or lines of influence or something, I was thinking it was gonna be that this thing penetrating into the world, trying to find purchase in the world, is dressed up like the father, but is maybe not the father, you
that
know?
is also
Yeah.
very PKE. And
Yeah.
I believe, hold on, I will tell you in a moment, but I
Yeah.
believe Father Thing is in volume 2 of the collection of
Okay.
short
All right.
stories.
All right.
For I feel like I have to n- n- no, it's volume 3.
Okay.
So but yeah, those are the father thing is definitely one that also I think it's one of the more straightforward horror stories that he wrote. So
Okay. Nice,
but
man. That's really good to know.
yeah, but yes, the something penetrating, yes,
Hmm.
also very PKD. Let's
Yeah.
look. And I know Steve Davidson from Amazing Stories always tells me that
Mm.
I'm like the never ending Rorschach test of like I can find the PKD themes and everything, and then I'm like, no, I really just do it when I know they're serious. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Severance is the hard one because the guy who actually wrote Severance is literally not into PKD, but like
Oh.
you would never believe it just watching the show because there's so many Philip K. Dick themes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he lives in a PKD world, though. You know what I mean? I mean, a world
That's
that
true.
PKD has completely suffused, you know? So how can you not have some influence?
That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So now, one of the questions I wanted to ask that I don't think
Hmm.
anyone else has asked you before,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I wanted to do this with a little bit of time left,
Yeah.
and many of our horror listeners are going to check out here. But I had the thought yesterday, I was playing in a pickup game, and I had the thought that I knew I was interviewing you tomorrow.
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
like, I wonder what kind of basketball player Steven was like in
Hmm.
a pickup
Hmm.
game. And
Hmm.
I really wanted to pick your brain because
Hmm.
I had a moment yesterday where I was defending a guy who got ahead of me. This kid was really quick,
Hmm.
and I knew that this guy was not good at laying up the ball, so I let him lay up the ball
Hmm.
because I had a feeling he'd smoke it, and he smoked it,
Hmm.
right? And I barely touched him, and he called a foul, and
Hmm.
I said, "Oh, no way!
Yeah.
That's the weakest shit I've ever heard. That is
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
not a foul." And then somebody said to me, dude, I've never seen you call somebody out on a foul before. You're not
Yeah.
that type of basketball player. And then I had
Yeah.
the thought, because it was the last game, I was
Hmm.
getting on my bike, I was riding home, and I thought, I want to talk to Steven about what kind of basketball player he was.
Yeah.
So, first off, what was your natural position? Like, what was your favorite way to try and score? So let's go back
My
because I know the knee hasn't been great for a couple of years.
yeah.
So it's been a
Yeah,
little
and I
while.
mean more than a couple since '07. But my best way to score was trash, picking up trash. If because um
You're a
I,
rebounder.
I
You're
was
a
a
boy.
rebounder. I used to be able to jump really high, but even when I wasn't that good of a jumper, I was always a really good rebounder. And so I would just pick up trash. People, shoot it from wherever, and I could generally get that ball and put it back in the same motion,
So a
And
good box out too,
yeah,
right?
well, I wasn't a great boxer outer actually. I was more of a snaky guy. Um, I would, yeah, well, I would. Coach would always get on me for not being a good boxer outer, actually. And I wasn't a good screen setter. There was a lot of things I don't do good in basketball, but I would usually get rebounding trophies and prizes at all the basketball stuff I did. I'd, I always watch Dennis Rodman. People talk about his phenomenal rebounding abilities, and I try to pick apart how does he do it? Does he tip it to himself? Is he in the right place at the right time? I never can quite figure it out with him, but I don't know how I did it either. But I was a good rebounder, and I just picked up trash. But tell you the truth, put me on the court with a one-on-one player, especially if that player is a guard, and they'll usually smoke me. I don't. That's not where my skill set is. My skill set is I'm gonna hang around within like 8 feet of the basket. I'm gonna get all the trash and put it back in, you know.
That's
And
interesting.
but also, I don't think I would in a pickup game. I would never call a foul. That just seems like just asking to get pounded, you know. I mean, like
Yeah.
if when people called a foul on me, I would say sure, sure, and then I would tell myself next time you're gonna know you got fouled because you're gonna be on the ground and you're probably not playing next weekend because you're still hurt, you know. Like I was never reluctant to hurt people on the basketball court, you know.
Well, I will say the guy did try to come back at me after I
Mm-hmm.
called him weak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he overplayed on defense, and I like 2 plays later I got a bucket on him, like in the
Nice,
mid-range.
nice,
So
nice.
he overplayed his hand after that because I
Yeah,
he was mad. And it's true.
yeah.
I'm usually very quiet, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
But also we've got a guy at our we have a run on Monday and Wednesday that plays in this one particular gym, and we have a
Mm-hmm.
guy there now. His name's Young. He's an incredible shooter, and he's great because he looks like a black Krusty the Clown because of his natural hairline.
Mm-hmm.
But Young is an amazing shooter, like just knockdown shooter. But the dude, never trust him on the score because he's adding points every like
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it'll be like 6-8, and then all of a sudden he's like 10-6, 10-6, and we're like, fuck no. Who taught you math?
Oh, that's great. That's
When you
great.
see adding points when you're,
Oh,
you know.
that's hilarious, man. You know,
Well,
I
and
got
then my next
yeah,
question
yeah, yeah.
is was hoop what was something that was unique about hooping in West Texas where you grew up? Because I grew up playing in Indiana, and
Oh,
first of all, in Indiana, threes were a big thing. People loved to play 3-on-3.
huh, huh.
But here, I like whenever I try to get people as like, oh, we have enough for threes, people are always like, well, let's wait till we have more people.
Wow. So did they want to go full court with
They want to
five
go
on
full
five?
court. They want to do fives. They never want to play like threes or half court.
Really?
Yeah,
No,
like
we did a lot of 3-on-3 half court in West Texas too. That's weird. It's like you play with who you've got, you know. That's the way I was always like taught or indoctrinated or something like that.
yeah, if
But
I can get a couple more minutes of buckets,
yeah, yeah.
like I, give it to me, right? You
Yeah, you
know?
know, I guess if there was anything unique about playing pickup games in West Texas, number one would be they were all outside, but I'm sure they're outside anywhere it's warm enough. I think what might possibly be unique is everyone out there can use a cutting torch and a welder, and there's just so much scrap pipe piled around everywhere that we would build our own basketball goals, and we'd put winches and pulleys and all this stuff so we could lower it and raise it for different games, you know, and they would be super solid, and sometimes they'd be super junky. Sometimes they fall down when we try to slam. But if there's anything unique, that's what I would call it. Yeah, because we would have these like complicated cables and stuff to raise and lower these rims, and they wouldn't like stay on the same plane. It was all stupid and junky, but I'm not sure that happened everywhere.
Now, and I have a question too. Did you always play win by two?
Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah, okay.
I don't know any other way. I don't know any other way to do it actually, man.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
run I play in outside and over by the beach every Saturday, we
Uh-huh.
always play win by two.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this gym that I've been playing at, they always want to play straight up, like
Huh,
13 or 15
huh.
straight up.
Oh, weird.
And I think that's so strange. I love winning by two because it's so
Yeah,
much more definitive.
yeah. And
Like,
there's also like make it take it. You know, you have to figure that out beforehand. But we usually
yeah,
did make it take it too. Yeah.
yeah, that we do half court, but if you're playing full court, you
Yeah.
gotta play
Oh
more
yeah,
efficient.
that'd be a lot of work to go back to your end of the court.
Yeah.
Start over.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted a few basketball
Yeah.
questions, and I know
Yeah.
you got to go soon. So let's
No,
get
that's
back
good. Yeah.
to the business at
Hmm.
the business at
Hmm.
hand.
Hmm.
There's got to be a few people out there that got to be interested in what
Yeah.
playing pickup with Stephen Graham Jones would have
Yeah.
been like.
Yeah.
So, well, and yeah, and someday, I I've been told that Paul Tremblay is a really great shooter.
Yeah, he's a good
So
shooter. Yeah.
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 So someday we're gonna have a 3-point contest
Yeah.
for horror writers. I just
That'd be cool. Although I don't let myself touch a basketball anymore because I never can just dribble it. I never can just shoot free throws. It always turns into the last 3 seconds, and I got to duck this way and spin that way and rise up and hold, And it always turns into something that's gonna pop my knee and my ankle both.
now here's another question that I have. My philosophy is I have to make a shot before I leave. I
Oh
have to
yeah,
make a
yeah,
3-pointer before I leave. I cannot
yeah.
go leave on a miss.
Yeah, I can't
Right.
either. I mean, my rule usually is I end with free throws, and if I don't make 9 out of 10 of those free throws, then I'm there all night.
Well, and I had like a week ago, I hit a game winner that I
Hmm.
took a crazy shot in the corner. It
Hmm.
hit the front of the rim, hit the backboard, and banked back in.
Kawhi Leonard, man.
Right. But when it went in and it was the game winner,
Yeah,
everybody was like, come on, one more game. And I'm like, hell no, I'm going home
yeah.
on that.
Oh
I'm
yeah, for
going
sure,
home
man.
on that.
It's like when you're at a party and you accidentally say a perfect line, you follow it up with "see you later."
Yeah, yeah. I gotta go on that. I gotta go on that. All right. So mapping the interior, people can
Yeah,
find it now in this. How long is it that's cafe read? Is that happening for a while
I
or
think it's a month. If
oops, you froze a little bit. You think it's a month?
yeah, yeah, I think it's a month. Yeah, you froze too. One of them, maybe something between us froze. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's a month. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So for the whole month of May.
That's my suspicion, or it could have maybe it started with I think it came out with the 29th or something, so maybe it's a month up from that. I don't know, something like that.
Oh, that is super cool. All right.
Hmm.
Well, I will be promoting that concept.
Thank you.
And it's a good reason to go out there. And if you don't drink coffee, you get a chai latte and a mapping the interior. I recommend. But that's a great combo. Yeah, I enjoyed it reading it a second time, and it
Oh,
was
thank you.
funny because um, when because I read the original as a library read, so it was
Hmm.
exciting for me to have a copy so I could look at it a
Yeah,
little bit more closely.
yeah,
And but I have a rough draft of my review, but one of the things about writing this novel that I'm working on is it's put on my
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, for
the
sure.
to the slow boat.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do
The slow U-boat, huh?
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, mummies are slow too, so like you know. I
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
in my defense,
Mhm.
there's a lot of Egyptian history of anti-Semitism too. So
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
I this fits into the theme. Like, I'm just gonna tell you, I'm just gonna say
Nice.
that. So
Nice. Nice,
the
man.
next night to kill Nazis. So
Yeah, that's
uh
good, man.
yeah, but so on this, what's the next thing coming down the pipeline? What are we looking forward to?
July 15th, there's a Saga double coming. It's a flip book, like the old Ace thing. Was it Ace who did that? The where
Ace
it's
doubles. Yep.
Yeah, Ace doubles, yeah. So I'm doing Killer on the Road and The Babysitter Lives. The Babysitter Lives is showing up in print instead of only audio, and Killer on the Road is the flip book to that. It's a horror novel set on a single night in Wyoming along Interstate 80, where uh
I will teach you that Don Wollheim's official words that he used for the different novels was do-si do.
Dosey Do. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I
He
like
he
it.
would say
Yeah.
that like Lee Brackett, Big Jump, and Solar Lottery do-si do.
Oh,
Right.
I like that, man. Dosey Do. Oh, especially when if it's by different authors and it's like the two books are dancing with each other, huh?
Yeah.
They're spinning around on the dance floor. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they internally would call it in the
Huh.
office. They'd say that
Huh.
which book is going to be do-si do.
Oh, I
And
like that.
I
Nice.
would say that that is my favorite do-si do combo is
Uh,
Lee Brackett's The Big Jump and the Solar Lottery. I think it's
that's cool. That's
the
cool.
best do-si do because if people haven't
Uh-huh.
read Big Jump, Lee Brackett, it is sci-fi horror.
All
So
right. Nice.
it
I have not read it. I need to, I guess, man.
yeah, no, no, that was good. And for a long time it was Phil's top selling book because of Lee Brackett.
Oh, that's fun.
All
That's
right,
fun.
so you got
Yeah.
another interview to get to, and
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate your time, Stephen. This
Mm-hmm.
is a great way to end my work day.
Mm-hmm.
And I I just for folks that I do want to apologize once again that I haven't been doing a lot of episodes. This will change. The last episode was Philip Frakazi talking about the third rule of time travel. And I guess I'm gonna probably have Philip back because I got his new book, the Autumn Springs Retirement Home, in the mail the other day. So
Mhm.
have you read that one? Because
I haven't read it yet. No, I'm sure it's good though if it's him. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
apparently it's a slasher set at a
Yeah.
retirement home.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I'm thrilled to read it, and I'm terrified to read it because for like 2 or 3 years I've been percolating a slasher at a retirement home. So I'm scared to read it because I wonder will I still be able to write mine if he did it better,
that
and so
that
so
can happen. The
yeah,
zeitgeist is a real
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So Stephen, it
yeah.
was great having you. Any last words?
Man, last words. Read more Philip K. Dick. How's that?
Yeah. Well, I'm always going to agree with that. Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. And
Mhm.
on that note, we'll see you folks next time. Stephen, thanks for your time. And I'm sure my review's coming out soon, and I've already got a review up for The Babysitter Lives. So from the audio version. So yeah, you got my approval on that one as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, folks.